So today's class is going to be very fascinating, pretty much like the last class that we had on the Bronze Age. So what I would want is, I would want you all to watch a video for a few minutes and then give me two stock observations that you see the person in the video. Okay, we will get introduced to that person in some time when we talk about the roundtable conferences, when we talk about the non-cooperation movement, the civil disobedience movement. But I love that person for many reasons. And he somehow has shaped and defined what India is today. So today, before we begin and speak about the Vedas, let's watch a video for a couple of minutes and tell me two stock observations that you have about that person. Okay.
Here he is at last, the mystery man of India. Our first glimpse as the Rajputana came alongside at Marseille. And there's a woman of whom you've probably all read, but never seen in a picture. Miss Madeline Slade, the English daughter of an admiral, who now prefers to be known as Malara Ben. She's one of Mr. Gandhi's most devout disciples. She's leading the way ashore now. And just behind her comes Mr. Gandhi, dressed as he said he would be, in just his loincloth, even in the chilly climes of Europe. And he's carrying with him his pots and pans, which he declared at the customs. He was trotted around Marseille to several receptions and made one or two speeches which rather frightened the French authorities. When asked to speak into the sound-filled microphone, he said, "I think not." And so we go on our way to England. Well, here we are at Folkestone, with the Biarritz coming alongside, and as Gandhi said, in proper English weather, pouring rain and bitterly cold. Miss Slade was the first ashore to tend to the luggage, that is, the goat's milk, etc. She was followed by Gandhi's son, and then came the little man, still scantily clad, but with an extremely wet blanket around his tiny frame. I'm sure he must have been frozen. We were in thick overcoats. He picked his way through the puddles along the quay side, and he was wearing sandals, by the way, to the waiting motor car, for he decided that he'd rather go up to London by road. He insisted on sitting up in the front seat with the driver. He said that he could see better that way. So he tucked himself in, and so off to London, whilst his followers went by the boat train.
Okay, fascinating. Now, no answer is right, no answer is wrong. It's all about your observations. Okay, so let me check with Twinkle. What are your thoughts? Two observations, that's it.
I have an observation about the video. I'm surprised with how much fanfare or attention he's being received in the UK, because they did have like a racist tendency, and India was a colony. So it is surprising how a leader from the colony, or like they're giving so much attention to Gandhi. It is surprising. I mean, if somebody came from Pakistan today to our country, I don't think that would be, the media coverage would be that positive. Obviously, there would be media coverage, but it's not as negative as I assumed it could be.
Okay.
So that is like one observation I have.
All right, very interesting. But all of you, please do not worry, because we will be covering this aspect of India's history as and when we touch the modern Indian history. We will be having a lot of debates about the non-cooperation movement, the roundtable conferences, various opinions that many parties had about the RTCs. In London, I think Gandhiji was there to attend the RTC. So please do not fret. Just speak your mind out, and could be anything. Shubham, what are your thoughts?
So basically from this video, what I noticed is stark how we look at Gandhiji and the other people. And the second thing is like Gandhiji was really good at marketing himself. So what he stood for, and he really conveyed it through the way he was dressed and what shoes he was wearing, and everything he had really got it in a very good sense that whatever the way I walk, the way I talk, everything conveys what I
So Gandhiji is
stand for.
cognizant that he is representing India. So whatever and he speaks, however he represents himself, he is in a way representing India. So marketing will go along with how he markets himself. Fascinating. Aditya, what are your thoughts?
Sir, looking at the video, it reminds me about a line which Sarojini Naidu said about him, that it cost the nation a lot to keep Gandhiji in poverty. The way the narrator was describing that what he's wearing and even what shoes he's wearing, it seems like it's all made up thing.
So it costs nation a lot to even keep our honorable prime minister safe. But very interesting remarks. Fantastic. Vinay, what are your thoughts? And then we move ahead in the journey. All right. So Vinay, are you still there? Okay.
Yeah. So the first thing immediately came to my mind after seeing this is the British seemed quite fascinated with how he portrayed himself. That's the first thing I could see. And another thing I could see is that like they were based on like the kind of security he was being given and things like that. They were quite afraid of him as well, like how, and they were surprised how he could represent our country.
All right. Brilliant. See, Gandhiji epitomizes what I genuinely want all of you to epitomize in years to come. Of course, he was a human being, so there will be many flaws with him. And many in history will question his ethos, his credos, and his decisions, his actions, his inactions. And it is absolutely fine to debate and discuss. But that man was remarkable in his own rights. He achieved something that you can't even achieve in your dreams. He rallied the entire country together. He made a name for himself and as a nation, not just in India, but across the globe. He spoke of ideologies, the philosophies that were truly ahead of his time. Today, we speak a lot about nonviolence. We speak a lot about environment. Gandhiji spoke about those issues a long, long time ago. So when I saw that video, three things were very, one core observation for me was that he was contrarian in his approach. And what do I mean by that? He was contrarian. I cannot remember any other person in that entire video other than Gandhiji. Because the way he dressed, because perhaps the way he, sat in front of the vehicle. Back in the days, everyone would want to sit in the back seat. But here was a man who was defying the usual trend and sitting on the first seat, along with the driver, just because so that he can have a better view. So along the journey, I'm very optimistic. Usually contrarians, they thrive in the world. Could be getting into civil services, could be investing in better stocks, could be becoming great entrepreneurs. So contrarians will have to thrive because they take a bet against the usual trends. And everyone else, you will forget them, but contrarians will always be remembered. So at least 100 people here, I see 74 here right now. I really hope that you become contrarians. The way you think, the way you behave, the way you act, and the way you see the world. And what does it mean in the idea of UPSC preparation, the contrarian logic? The usual trend would be that there will be many youngsters who would want to, and this is an answer to all those who want to work very hard, who want to study all the books. This is an answer for all of you who are really confused about which books to read and why to read. See, minimize your resources. Pick the easy route, but think smartly on anything that you do. Many of your counterparts who are not part of this ecosystem will be debating, in ancient history should be read by R.S. Sharma, or should I be reading A.L. Basham's India's Wonder, or whatever that book's name is. They will debate, should I read old Tamil Nadu's book or the new Tamil Nadu's book? I don't want none of you to, worry about it, because what will happen is, and I'll be very honest with you, in the preliminary examination and also in the mains examination, there's 100% chance that you will stumble upon questions that you have absolutely no idea of. You don't know the answer to it. And along the classes, my goal is not to give you those answers. My goal is simple, that when you see 4 options, you can logically and analytically make a conjecture which one is right. When I appeared for my UPSC prelims examination, I studied for 3 months. All I know were 35 questions with surety that these will be correct. For the rest of the questions, I made few guesses. People in the outside world will think that Naman got lucky when he cleared prelims and I scored with the good marks. But I was not lucky. I was just being smart. I knew there were 4 options. Now I have to eliminate those options. We'll discuss these strategies once we are closer to prelims. But the goal is simple. We will go through the history. We will understand the basics. And in all likelihood, you will not be able to answer the questions in the mains examination with it. But what will happen is your conjecture power becomes so strong that you will make better guesses. If you can do that, you are bound to succeed. It took me 3 months to clear prelims. It took me time between the prelims and mains to crack the mains examination. And I did not even prepare for interview. I got 2 or 4 marks in the interview. People around me were preparing for 5 years, 4 years. They failed in many of those stages. They studied all the books. You can also study all the books. You can study R.S. Sharma. You can do multiple books for ancient history and the medieval history, but that's not the goal. The goal is to clear the exam. And for that, you need to learn how to make conjectures, how to be contrarians. So we are approaching this entire exam in a very contrarian fashion. We will read all the standard books, but the goal we know is to, you can't study everything. That's not possible. You can't even revise those things. We will study some very basic books, and we will show the world that we can crack the exam even with these basic books. You don't need so many innumerable resources to crack the exam. You need to learn how to think and how to make conjectures. That's the goal. Okay, so whenever in life you have the option between working hard and working smart, always choose working smart. Because laborers work hard. I don't want you to be laborers. I want you to be kings and queens. Warren Buffett works way less today than an Infosys engineer. It's just because the way he makes decisions that is important. Okay, so the world around you would be like, the non-Gandhians wearing all the coats, all the good clothes, sitting in the back. Don't be like them. Be contrarian. The logic is simple. We read 2 standard books. We will do it. We'll solve a lot of papers, but we will be all making conjectures to come up with the answers, because you cannot answer all the questions. That's not the goal. Learning the facts, cramming those facts is ridiculous. So today we will talk about a beautiful age in the Indian history. Can anyone take a guess what is that age going to be about? What is that? We spoke about the Bronze Age in the last class, the fall of the Harappan civilization. And today begins the new phase of Indian history. Anyone who'd want to take a shot? I know there are no pre-reads, so don't worry. Okay, Twinkle says Iron Age. Vinay, what are your thoughts?
The arrival of Vedic people.
The Vedic people. Now, here a very interesting term was used. The Vedic people. What are Vedic peoples? What's the first word that comes to your mind when you hear the word Vedic people or Vedas or Vedic civilization? I hope you all have done your research on differences between culture and civilization. I'm giving you one more day to do the research. I will ask you to, I'll ask someone to explain it. But until that happens, just give me one thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word Vedas. Let me check with Shushrita. What are your thoughts?
When the first thing when it comes to my mind when you saw about Vedic people is basically the culture, the rules, what they follow, the Vedic laws, whatever we say. So it's
Vedic
basically
laws.
the laws.
Just pick one adjective. So Vedic laws is what comes to your mind when you hear the word Vedas.
Yeah, first. Yeah.
Manish, what about you?
Sir, I think I've come in mind there is 4 Vedas.
For you, it's 4 Vedas that comes to the mind. Fascinating. Is there anyone who has not heard of Vedas or Vedic culture and have no idea and thinks it's all bullshit? I don't want to even learn about this. Anyone who thinks like that, it's totally fine. And to all those who have not watched through the recordings and have missed the classes, do not worry. Every class is a fresh beginning. There are no pre-reads. All I request is post-reads after the classes. Okay. So Gurpreet, what are your thoughts on the Vedic culture?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So my thought on the question that you have posed is basically a set of new rules for the society, because we had studied previously about the Indus Valley. They had their own rules. Probably this Vedic culture has a new set of rules for their society.
Okay, fascinating. I mean, as of now, one very interesting answer that I've heard is that the thing that comes to their mind is what are the 4 Vedas. Many have heard of those Vedas. There are many who may not even have heard of those Vedas. Muskan, what are your thoughts? One adjective that comes to your mind when you hear the word Vedic culture or civilization or Vedic age.
So Vedic age is defined by the start of written records, with Vedas being the literature texts which are available.
Written records. Okay, we'll have a huge debate on that.
Vedas.
Okay, fascinating. But the question, Muskan, is I'll change the question now. So what is the point of reading Vedic culture? Why do we have that in the history? What do we learn from it? Why should we even study it? Because you can keep on reading so many books, but if you don't know the reason why we're studying this, you will forget it. So Muskan, same question. What's the point of reading Vedic culture?
So the point of reading Vedic culture is, I think these texts exist, like they've been going on for a long period of time, like over a span of like 1,000 years. So the inscriptions which exist in these texts provide a lot of context about how the lives were lived, which were not available to us, the way of which was not available for us knowing in the previous ages. So just how the societies were conducted, how the life was lived.
Because it is extremely, and you're right, because it is extremely important to understand where did we come from, what values shaped us, what philosophies have guided our civilization. Some may disagree with the content of Vedas and the teachings. They may contest the idea, but there are people who may invoke Vedas to establish authority over India. From Tilak to Gandhi, all have studied Vedas and have formed opinions and have invoked Vedas in their speeches. Even when British came to rule India, they had to make the sense of Vedas. Why? Why did they take the effort to translate those Vedas into English? And who did that? Sudhamini?
Vedas provide us with the roots of the social stratification that exists today. And the British were especially interested in reading and translating the Vedas in order to understand the culture comprehensively, in order to find ways to break it. And I suppose Sir William Jones was one of the first people to venture into this. I'm not quite sure.
William Jones is also famous for founding one of the very interesting societies. What's the name of that society? The Asiatic Society of Bengal. But yeah, you're right to some extent. But I don't think Britishers, they care about understanding the Vedas. But one interesting thing that Sudhamini mentioned was they studied Vedas so that they can further break the society. What does that mean? Shubham?
Actually, I wanted to contribute my thoughts to the previous
No
discussion
previous. We will be doing the current discussions. Because Sudhamani had put a very interesting point. She mentioned that British wanted to study Vedas. Yeah, I mean, they wanted to understand it, but they did so that they can further break the society, the Indian society.
Okay, so if I can take a guess. So initially, when Britishers came down to India, they wanted to understand how Indian society is structured, and they saw there were clear distinctions. So they wanted to put those distinctions as differentiations, like someone is lower and someone is upper, and maybe to cut our society in further pieces, and to put forward the narrative of it, this is not distinction, this is differentiation.
Okay.
That's why they might have gone ahead with that.
Fascinating. Now, all of you unraise your hands. And let me just build on to what you just beautifully said. It is never about that they were interested in the intellectual and scholarly pursuits of the ancient Indian civilization, the way it's usually mentioned. They wanted to control and administer a region in India. And to do so, they had to understand the region, not just politics, but also society. So Vedas, when you read them, will also tell you a bits and pieces about the religion, the society, the economy of India. You need to understand the beliefs and practices of Indian people. And why is that important? Because even when Mahatma Gandhi, when he came to India after a long hiatus in the foreign lands, he travels across India on trains, meeting people from across the region. And then he moved on to participate in India's struggle for independence. And therefore, the story of Vedas became important. Even if British had to convert people to, let's say, follow Christianity, they need to translate Vedas, understand Vedas, and build arguments against it. And there are instances, and many historians have debated, that they cherry-picked data to further prove their points. Rightfully so. I think that's how economists also do it, right? They might skip out on the core inflation, talk about the headline inflation. They might talk about WPI and not CPI basis, what makes a lot of sense to them. Don't worry if you do not know the headline and the core and the WPI and or even inflation. We will be covering economics in some time. Any thoughts as of now, before I move further into the debate? Any observation? Shivanandan?
Sir, I think the concept of Orientalism and also their motives of subversion works here, sir. Actually, sir, they definitely used our Vedas to create a false narrative among the people, to tell them that, listen, this is what you are following and you are following the wrong thing, and we are here to tell you the right thing. So this was the, sir, I think a planned conspiracy, we can say, or a planned way to make the Indian natives to be ashamed of what they are, who they are, what they belongs to. And the entire goal was to the subversion theory, and try to make us inconfident of ourselves.
So I think Shivanandan also used a term called Orientalism. Can anyone tell me and explain to the class what is Orientalism? Not many will be aware of it. Very crisp, clear definition of what is Orientalism.